The whispering mirror. Ethan had always wanted to live alone. When he finally moved into an old apartment in the quiet part of town, he thought he had found the perfect place. The rent was cheap, the neighbors were mostly elderly, and the building had a strange but undeniable charm. However, from the first night, he noticed something unusual: whispers coming from the bathroom. At first, he dismissed it as his imagination. He had always been a rational person, not someone who believed in ghosts or supernatural occurrences. But as the nights passed, the whispers grew more persistent. Sometimes they were faint, like the wind passing through a crack in the wall. Other times, they were clearer, as if someone were speaking just beyond the bathroom door. One evening, as he brushed his teeth, Ethan glanced at the mirror above the sink. For a split second, he thought he saw his reflection move, just a fraction of a second before he actually did. He shook his head, telling himself he was just tired. But then, it happened again. The next night, as he stood in front of the mirror, he noticed that his reflection was slightly off. The movements didn't quite match his own. It was as if the reflection were hesitating, observing him before mirroring his actions. A shiver ran down his spine. Still, he convinced himself it was a trick of the light, a distortion caused by the old glass. Then came the voice. It was a whisper, directly in his ear, though he was alone in the bathroom. "Let me out." Ethan spun around, heart hammering. The bathroom was empty. He swallowed hard, his fingers gripping the edge of the sink. His reflection was still there, staring back at him, but something was wrong. His reflected self was smiling, a wide, unnatural grin, while Ethan himself was frozen in fear. He took a step back, his breath quick and shallow. The reflection did not step back. It simply stood there, smiling. "Let me out," it whispered again, this time its lips moving in the glass. Panic surged through him. He grabbed a towel and threw it over the mirror, then stumbled out of the bathroom, locking the door behind him. He spent the night in his bedroom, listening to every creak and rustle in the dark apartment. He told himself he would call someone to remove the mirror in the morning. But when morning came, the mirror was clear. His reflection was normal again. The whispers had stopped. Ethan let out a nervous laugh, blaming it on stress, lack of sleep, or maybe just an overactive imagination. That night, however, everything escalated. As he lay in bed, he heard it again. The whisper, faint but unmistakable, coming from the bathroom. "Let me out." His body stiffened. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Slowly, he sat up and turned toward the bathroom door. The whisper came again, more insistent this time. Ethan stood, grabbing his phone and turning on the flashlight. With each step toward the bathroom, his body screamed for him to stop, to turn around and leave. But something compelled him forward. The whispers became murmurs, then voices, overlapping, pleading, begging. He reached for the doorknob with a trembling hand and pushed the door open. The mirror was fogged over, as if someone had been breathing on it. His reflection was barely visible through the condensation. He stepped closer. Then, as if an unseen hand had wiped the surface clean, the fog vanished. His reflection stared back at him, grinning once more. But this time, it lifted its hand, and Ethan did not. He felt his blood turn to ice. The reflection's hand pressed against the glass, and from the other side, he could hear the faint sound of fingernails scraping against it. "Let me out." The voice was no longer a whisper. It was a scream. Ethan staggered backward, his foot slipping on the tile floor. He fell hard, pain jolting through his body, but he didn't take his eyes off the mirror. The reflection was still there, but something was emerging from behind it. A hand, pale and skeletal, pushing through the glass as if the mirror were liquid. Desperate, Ethan scrambled to his feet. He grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, the soap dish, and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered instantly, but instead of falling to the floor, the shards disappeared into a black void beyond the frame. A terrible, inhuman wail filled the room as the reflection, his reflection, was pulled backward into the darkness. Then silence. Ethan stood there, breathing heavily, his hands shaking. The mirror was gone. Only the empty frame remained, showing nothing but the bare wall behind it. He didn't sleep that night, or the next. By the third day, he had packed his bags and left the apartment for good. But before he could leave, he glanced one last time at the empty frame in the bathroom. And in the darkness of that frame, deep within the void, two pale hands were still pressing against the edges, trying to find their way back through. The midnight knock. Mia had always enjoyed living alone. Her small apartment in the city was cozy, quiet, and exactly what she needed after long workdays. But lately, she had been feeling uneasy. Perhaps it was just stress, or maybe the exhaustion of daily life catching up to her. That changed on a cold autumn night when she woke up to a soft knocking sound at her door. It was subtle, almost hesitant, barely loud enough to wake her. She blinked against the darkness and reached for her phone. 2 a.m. Her first thought was that she had imagined it, just a sound from a neighbor's apartment. But then, the knocking came again, slightly louder this time. Mia sat up in bed, her heart beginning to pound. Who would be knocking at this hour? She tiptoed toward the door, her bare feet cold against the wooden floor. Pressing her eye to the peephole, she saw nothing. The dimly lit hallway outside was empty. A chill ran down her spine. Perhaps it was a prank, a neighbor playing games. Still, unease prickled at her skin. She took a deep breath and turned away. Maybe if she ignored it, they would go away. But then, the knocking returned. Harder, more insistent. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she flicked on the hallway light. Her hand hesitated on the doorknob. Slowly, she leaned forward and peered through the peephole again. This time, she froze. Someone was staring back at her. An eye, wide, unblinking, bloodshot, was pressed right against the peephole. The distorted face behind it was too close, too eager. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She stumbled backward, her mind racing. How long had they been standing there, watching her? She gripped her phone with trembling fingers, her thoughts spinning between calling the police and running out the back door. Then, her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "I'm already inside." Mia's blood ran cold. She barely had time to react before she heard it. A slow creak from her bedroom. The closet door. A shadow moved in the darkness. And then, the whisper, "You should have opened the door." Mia's body stiffened, every muscle locking in terror. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. She wanted to run, but where? Her apartment was small, and she suddenly felt trapped, as if the walls were closing in on her. The soft sound of fabric rustling came from the closet. Someone, or something, was shifting inside. She forced herself to move. Step by step, she backed away from the bedroom, her eyes never leaving the dark gap where the closet door had been left slightly ajar. Her fingers fumbled to dial emergency services, but her hands were shaking too much. Her phone slipped from her grasp, hitting the wooden floor with a dull thud. The sound echoed in the silent room, and then the closet door creaked open wider. Mia turned and bolted. She sprinted down the hall, aiming for the front door. If she could just make it outside. A cold hand clamped down on her wrist. She screamed, twisting, struggling, but the grip was impossibly strong. Shadows curled around her, pulling her back into the darkness. The whispering voice grew louder, surrounding her, filling her mind. Too late. The last thing Mia saw before the world went black was her phone screen flashing a final message. "Now we are one." The next morning, the apartment was silent. The door was still locked. The neighbors never heard a thing. And the only sign Mia had ever lived there was her phone, lying face up on the floor, displaying a new message. Who's next? The child under the bed. Anna had been a babysitter for years, and she thought she had seen it all. Crying babies, tantrum-throwing toddlers, even children who refused to sleep unless every single stuffed animal was perfectly aligned. But nothing could have prepared her for the night she spent at the Campbell house. The job seemed easy enough. The Campbells needed someone to watch their 6-year-old daughter, Lily, while they attended a charity gala. Anna arrived at their suburban home around 7 p.m., greeted by the warm glow of the living room lights and the soft hum of classical music playing from a speaker. "Lily's already had dinner," Mrs. Campbell said as she grabbed her coat. "She just needs a bedtime story, and she'll go right to sleep." Mr. Campbell smiled, adjusting his tie. "She's a good kid. Shouldn't give you any trouble." Anna smiled back, reassured by their confidence. She had babysat for them once before, and Lily had been an angel, quiet, polite, and well-behaved. As the Campbells left, Anna settled in with Lily, reading her favorite bedtime story. The little girl listened intently, her blue eyes wide with fascination. When the story ended, Anna tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and switched off the light. She was just about to leave the room when Lily grabbed her sleeve. "Anna, can you check under my bed?" Anna smiled, used to this request. "There's nothing under there, sweetheart. Just your toys." Lily's grip tightened. "Please, I think there's someone there." Something about the way she said it sent a small chill down Anna's spine. But she had been through this before. Kids had vivid imaginations. She sighed, knelt down, and lifted the edge of the blanket to peek under the bed. And then she saw her. Another Lily. The girl under the bed looked exactly like the one in the bed above. Same golden curls, same pink pajamas. But her eyes were wide with fear, and her lips trembled as she whispered, "Anna, there's someone on my bed." Anna's breath hitched in her throat. She slowly looked back at the Lily lying in bed, her heart pounding against her ribs. The Lily above was staring at her with a soft, unreadable expression. "What's wrong, Anna?" the Lily in the bed asked, her voice calm. Anna turned back to the girl under the bed, whose terrified eyes pleaded with her. "Please," the girl beneath whispered, "don't let her know you saw me." A cold shiver ran down Anna's spine. Her mind raced, struggling to process what she was seeing. Which one was the real Lily? "Anna." The voice from the bed was firmer now. "Why are you still looking under there?" Anna forced a shaky laugh and lowered the blanket, hiding the girl beneath. "No one's there, sweetie," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Just your toys, like I said." The Lily on the bed smiled. "Okay, good night, Anna." Anna hesitated before turning off the light. She exited the room slowly, her hands trembling. As she stood in the hallway, she heard a faint whisper from beneath the bed. "Please don't leave me alone with her." Anna clutched her chest, debating whether to go back inside. The house was silent, but the tension in the air was suffocating. She grabbed her phone, considering calling the Campbells, but what would she even say? That there were two Lilies? Then she heard something else, a soft creaking sound, like someone shifting in bed. And then, the slow, deliberate sound of small feet touching the floor. Anna didn't wait. She ran down the stairs, grabbing her bag and throwing open the front door. The cold night air hit her as she fumbled for her car keys, her mind screaming at her to leave. As she reached her car, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands and looked at the screen. A new message from an unknown number. "Why did you leave me alone?"